What is a gun rights activist? Well, it's someone who cares about the Second Amendment enough to get involved politically in defense of their rights. But that takes many shapes and forms. Today we're going to take a look at activism and how to become a better gun rights activist. I'm your host Tiffany, and you're watching One in the Chamber. Before we get into this video, I wanted to take a second to invite you to GOA's first convention, Goals, the Gun Owners Advocacy and Leadership Summit in Knoxville, Tennessee on August 17th to the 18th. Experience tons of booths from your favorite manufacturers and hear from the top voices in the Second Amendment community. And the best part, it's free for GOA members. Register now with the link in the description. I'll see you in Knoxville. Now on to the video. Do you consider yourself a gun rights activist? If you don't, maybe you should. It's important to get involved, and without those willing to stand up and defend the Second Amendment, the massive billionaire-funded anti-gun lobby and their allies in Congress would have nobody to stop them, and our right to bear arms would start to look a lot like Mexico's. For those that don't know, Mexico surprisingly has constitutional right to bear arms. It's just that you can only buy from one shop in the entire country, and most types of firearms and calibers are restricted to military and law enforcement. The anti-gun lobby in the United States would love nothing more than to follow down this path. This is why not only is it important for you to get involved, but also important to get others involved as well, especially with elections coming up. Even besides the presidential election, there's a ton of state and local elections that have an outsized impact on gun owners coming up this November. It's never been a better time to get involved and encourage others to do so as well. Also, action on the state and local level can have an outsized impact. You and a group of friends could successfully sway your state or federal representative to your point of view by engaging with them and holding them accountable to their constitutional oath to protect the Second Amendment. Here's a bit of DC agency talk to make the point. Often when politicians deal with upset constituents, they'll use a ratio to estimate how many people are upset. Usually they assume that if a constituent is upset to take time out of their day to call the representative, there must be at least 10 other people who are upset that didn't take that time to call. And if one person shows up at the office, that usually represents 100 other people. So if you had a group of 10 friends from your local range organized to make phone calls, you'd be doing the work of 100 people, just by calling. And imagine if you set up a table at a local gun range, with permission from the owner, to ask patrons if they could take a few minutes out of their day to call the representative as well. Imagine it's a busy day and you get quite a few people to make a phone call. You're sure to see change, as the politician must assume there are quite a few angry voters out there, and there's a chance that a bad vote could affect their re-election chances. It's unfortunate, but the fact that people don't vote and don't get engaged with the system as it stands is why politicians feel so comfortable attacking your fundamental rights. Now, that's all great if you have a way to organize with people who are pro-gun, but what if you don't? What if, like many Americans, much of your social circle are on the fence about guns or outright opposed? I'm glad you asked. That brings me to my next point on being a better gun rights activist. Start where you are. One-on-one personal relationships are the most powerful mechanism for changing hearts and minds. A trip to the range can change someone's life. Those that are on the fence or even opposed to gun ownership entirely have completely changed their mind once they experience their Second Amendment right for themselves. Just listen to pro-gun activist and lawyer Colins Story's experience.
Just to kind of recap on the story, I had a good friend of mine who invited me out to the range. He was like, hey, do you want to go to the gun range? And initially I hesitated, because you got to remember, I wasn't really pro-gun. I wasn't anti-gun, but my background and my idea of firearm ownership was very much from the standpoint of anybody who had a firearm was either like a criminal, gangbanger, drug dealer, or they were a cop of some sort. That's just kind of how I grew up. I wasn't really raised in a pro-gun household, so to speak. And then with my mom raising me by herself, I'm pretty sure she did everything in her power to kind of shoo me away from guns, because she didn't grow up with guns either. And she had the same perspective. The only people who had guns were criminals. So for me, I went the vast majority of my life up until that point, never touching a gun. So my friend asked me to go to the gun range. And when he asked me, I hesitated and said, and in my mind I said, why not? I remember him showing me how to load the gun, racking around. He shot first, and then from there, he put the gun on the table. And I remember staring at the gun, I'm like, yo, this is really about to happen. So I remember picking up the gun. I was nervous as hell. I extended forward, I pulled the trigger, and the gun, for all intents and purposes in my brain, it exploded. And I was like, whoa, what was that? Whoa, 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 whoa. I kind of put it down, I picked it up again, and then I started shooting. And that second shot was love at second shot. That's when I fell in love with shooting. And then from there, I just did a deep sea dive into firearms. And you honestly get what you see before you hear today. Me, going from a guy who was scared to go to the gun range to whatever the hell it is I do now on the YouTubes and the internets and in the world.
For many pro-gun activists, this is exactly how their passion started. I'm sure some of you watching this video can relate. Because so many people have a misconception about firearms because of their portrayal in media or in pop culture, one of the best, most effective things that you can do is introduce your friends and associates to the reality of what gun ownership is. Once someone is introduced to the realities of gun ownership, the corporate media talking points all get called into question. Taking people to the range to experience firearms for themselves is one of the most effective things you can do as a pro-gun activist, and companies know this too. For the past few years, online retailer Brownells and other firearms industry companies sponsored an event called 2A Day. During 2A Day, gun owners and non-gun owners alike are encouraged to head to their local range for free firearm rental and free ammo to experience the Second Amendment for themselves. So if you're looking for somewhere to start there. Start with your kids, your parents, your family, your friends, anyone whose mind you feel like is worth changing. But where does GOA fit into all of this? Well, Gun Owners of America relies on grassroots activists like those of you watching this video right now to effect change at the state, local, and federal levels. We make it easy for our members to contact their elected officials, and we make sure that we keep our members informed with alerts on what shady anti-gun dealings are going on that could affect them. And because we make it so easy for passionate gun owners to make their voices heard, many members of Congress have taken notice on this. Just listen to Eric Pratt, GOA's Senior Vice President, talk about how GOA's grassroots activism works on Capitol Hill.
The first time I visibly saw the power of the grassroots in action was during my early years as a lobbyist for GOA. I was sitting in the office of a Republican congressman who wanted to introduce a crime bill that would derail the more draconian crime bill that was being put forward by anti-gun Democrats. In a prior meeting with him, which I had attended, he was trying to get all the gun groups on board in supporting his legislation. And I told him that while there were parts of his bill that we liked, GOA and our members could never sign off on some of the provisions in his legislation, provisions that would enhance ATF's power and jeopardize the rights of gun owners. Now, he didn't see it that way, so he pushed forward with his legislation. And of course, GOA responded by activating our grassroots members and urging them to contact their representatives in opposition to this anti-gun Republican crime bill. Well, that's what earned me a second invitation into this congressman's office. He was visibly upset, but cordial, and he said, "Your mail has been very successful on Capitol Hill. You even have my mother breathing down my neck. She's one of your members." Which was kind of funny. At this point, the congressman cried, "Uncle." He actually said those words, and he adopted the changes and deletions that we were seeking. Now, the congressman didn't buckle because of my powerful arguments. No, he relented and removed the problematic provisions from his bill because of the tremendous grassroots heat he was facing. And yes, some of that was even from his own mother. This is what makes joining a gun rights organization like GOA so effective. The more people GOA represents, the louder voice GOA has in Congress.
This is what it means to be a gun rights activist. So whether it's local, at the dinner table with a friend, or on the national level fighting the billionaire-funded anti-gun lobby in Congress, get involved and help save the Second Amendment. Maybe even take a friend to the Goals Conference coming up in August. Anyways, that's it for today. I'll see you guys next time.